I remember the plane ride to Dallas felt endless, even though it was only a couple of hours. Another industry conference, insurance adjusters talking blockchain applications for medical billing. Honestly, it was mind-numbing. I'd planned for 10 days, but by day 6, I just couldn't do it anymore. I told my boss it was a family emergency. I didn't know it then, but I wasn't wrong. So, I left early, driving the familiar route home to Plano, Texas, around 3 in the afternoon. The house I shared with my mom, Eleanor. She's 74, has diabetes, and early-stage Parkinson's. Nothing debilitating, but enough that she needed someone around. Someone to remind her about meds, to make sure she didn't try to lift furniture by herself. My brother, Stephen, certainly wasn't stepping up for any of that. From the street, everything looked perfectly normal. Eleanor's car was in the driveway, the garden was tidy. The house was quiet. Too quiet, maybe. As soon as I unlocked the front door, a cold knot formed in my stomach. The mail was stacked on the entry table, 3 days' worth. Eleanor sorts her mail religiously. It's part of her morning ritual, has been since I was a kid. Seeing that undisturbed pile was the first real alarm bell. Then, near the bottom of the stairs, her reading glasses lay on the floor. My mom doesn't just drop things and leave them. She's meticulous. "Mom?" I called out. No answer. I checked the kitchen, her bedroom, the back patio. Nothing. The house was empty. That's when I saw it, tucked under a grocery store flyer, an envelope with the Plano Community Hospital letterhead. Dated Monday morning, 3 days prior. My hands fumbled as I tore it open. A notification: Eleanor Hayes had been admitted to the ICU on Sunday night. Sunday night. And it was Wednesday. Nobody had called me. I grabbed my keys, heart hammering against my ribs, and sped off toward the hospital. 15 minutes felt like an eternity. All I could think about was the conversation I'd had with Stephen just before I left for Dallas. I'd asked him to check in on Eleanor. "Sure, no problem," he'd said. "I'll swing by every day." Now, she'd been lying in an ICU bed for 3 days, and I was only just finding out. The nurse at the front desk simply pointed me down the hall. I walked into the ICU room and just froze. Eleanor was there, a ghost of herself, connected to a breathing tube, a heart monitor, 2 lines. Her face was gaunt, as if the life had been drained right out of her. But what truly sent a jolt of pure rage through me was seeing Stephen and his wife, Tiffany, sitting in chairs beside her bed. Both of them, calm. No visible distress. No sign that this gravely ill woman was their mother. Stephen looked up, startled, when I walked in. "David, what are you doing here?" "Thought you were in Dallas until Sunday." I stared at him for what felt like an eternity, watching him fidget. "I got a letter," I finally managed, my voice tight. "Said Mom's been in the ICU for 3 days. Want to explain why nobody called me?" "We didn't want to worry you during your conference," he said, shrugging, almost nonchalant. "Everything's handled. Doctors have it covered. We figured we'd update you when you got back." Right. Because that made perfect sense. I walked to Eleanor's bedside, taking her hand. That's when I saw it, a dark, mottled bruise on her wrist, almost black. It was clearly not from a fall. That was from someone grabbing her. Hard. I turned back to Stephen. "What happened?" "She fell down the stairs, lost her balance," he said, his voice even. "We found her at the bottom and called 911 right away." Tiffany nodded along, her expression carefully blank. "It was awful. We got here as fast as we could." I looked at the bruise on Eleanor's wrist again, then back at their practiced, emotionless faces. "When did this happen?" "Sunday evening, around 7. "And you've been here since then?" Stephen shook his head. "We came Sunday night for a few hours." Been checking in every day. You know how it is. Can't sit here all day and night. We have jobs, responsibilities. I pulled out my phone, recalling the visitor log the nurse had shown me. Stephen and Tiffany had visited once, Sunday night, from 7:15 to 8:30. 75 minutes. That was it. Eleanor had been alone in the ICU for almost 3 full days while her son and daughter-in-law lived their normal lives. I'd later learned Stephen had listed himself as the primary emergency contact, telling the hospital I was out of state and unreachable. That's why no one called me. That's why the letter sat in the mailbox for days. A cold dread settled deep in my stomach. I told Stephen and Tiffany they could leave. Said I'd take it from here. Said I needed some time alone with Eleanor. Stephen started to object, but one look from me shut him down. He exchanged a glance with Tiffany, then they stood and walked out. After they left, I sat by Eleanor's bed, still holding her hand. The wrist bruise was fresh, maybe 3 days old at most. But there were other marks too, faded, yellowish bruises on her upper arm, and a scrape on her cheek that looked older than the supposed fall. Signs that something had been wrong even before Sunday. A nurse, Dr. Chin, came in to check vitals. I asked about the fall. She gave me a cautious look. The injuries align with a fall, yes. But some things raised questions. Like what? The bruising on her wrist. The doctor noted it. It's possible she grabbed onto something during the fall, but the pattern is unusual. I thanked her and sat back down. I stayed until visiting hours ended, talking to Eleanor, even though she couldn't respond, telling her I was here now, and everything would be handled. Around 9, I drove back to the house. It was dark, silent, and felt profoundly wrong. I turned on all the lights and began to search. The stairs were immaculate, no scuff marks, no damage to the railing, nothing to indicate a violent fall. I went up to Eleanor's bedroom. Everything appeared normal at first glance. Then I noticed her medication organizer on the nightstand. Sunday evening's doses were still there, untouched. If she fell around 7, she would have taken her meds first. She was absolutely rigid about her schedule. I checked her bathroom. Her blood glucose monitor showed the last reading from Sunday morning. More proof that something had interrupted her normal routine before the supposed fall. I went to my room, opened my laptop. I managed Eleanor's main accounts, but she kept Stephen on a savings account from 30 years ago, one she'd set up with my father. Community property rules meant Stephen had been a joint holder since she opened it. I never liked it, but Eleanor insisted. He's my son, David, she'd say. Families should trust each other. I logged into that account. My jaw tightened when I saw the balance. It should have been around $68,000, money she'd saved from Dad's life insurance and Social Security. Money she wanted to leave for both of us. Current balance, $12,000. I pulled up the transaction history. Withdrawals going back 6 months. $5,000 here, $8,000 there. None authorized by me. All signed off by Stephen. Total missing, $56,000. I leaned back in my chair. My brother had been taking funds from Eleanor's savings for half a year. And judging by the bruises and the suspicious story, she'd figured it out. I kept digging. Her credit card had charges I didn't recognize, restaurants, hotels, shopping sprees, all within the past 3 months. My first move was to lock down every account I could, change passwords, freeze credit cards, and remove Stephen's access from anything I had authority over. The joint savings account was trickier, but I documented every withdrawal and flagged the account for suspicious activity. It took about 2 hours. Then I sat back and waited. My phone rang. Unknown number. A shaky woman's voice. Is this David Hayes? Yeah. Who's this? I'm Linda. I live 2 doors down from your mother. I've been trying to reach you for days. I sat up straighter. What's going on? I saw what happened Sunday night. I've been scared to say anything, but I can't keep quiet anymore. Tell me. Linda took a deep breath. She'd been coming home from her book club around 6:30 Sunday evening. Saw Stephen's car in Eleanor's driveway. Thought it was nice he was visiting for once. But when she got out of her car, she heard shouting from inside the house, loud enough to hear through closed windows. She recognized Stephen's voice, loud, aggressive, saying something about money and respect. Then she heard Eleanor, scared, pleading, telling him to stop, to calm down, that they could talk about this. Linda almost went over, but she was afraid. Didn't want to get involved. Then, around 7 o'clock, she heard sirens. Saw the ambulance pull up. Watched the paramedics bring Eleanor out on a stretcher, unconscious. Watched Stephen and Tiffany follow in their car, looking calm, too calm, like they'd been expecting this. Linda had called the hospital the next day, but was told only family could get information. She didn't have my number. She'd spent the last few days feeling guilty. I thanked her, asked if she'd be willing to give a statement. She said yes, without hesitation. After I hung up, I sat in the dark, processing everything. I called my friend Marcus, a defense attorney I'd known since high school, now doing plaintiff work. He answered groggily. This better be good, Hayes. Marcus, I need your help. Family situation. Might involve criminal charges. That woke him up. I'm listening. I laid it all out, the suspicious fall, the bruises, the missing funds, Linda's statement, Stephen's calm act. Marcus listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a few seconds. You think Stephen caused her fall? I think something happened that wasn't an accident. That's grand larceny and physical harm to an elderly person. But you need proof beyond transaction records and neighbor testimony. What kind of proof? Video, audio. Something that shows what he did. I thought about it. I might be able to get it. Be careful. You're not a cop. You can't trap him. Anything you record needs to be legal. Understood. We talked strategy for another 20 minutes. Marcus explained what would hold up in court, what wouldn't, how to document everything, how to build a case the prosecutor couldn't ignore. After I hung up, I started making a plan to make sure Stephen and Tiffany faced real consequences. I wasn't interested in family reconciliation. I wanted them facing a jury. The next morning, I went back to the hospital early. Found Dr. Chin making rounds. Asked about Eleanor's status. She pulled me into a consultation room. Your mother suffered major head trauma, a subdural hematoma. We've relieved the pressure, but she's not out of danger. The next 72 hours are critical. What about the bruises on her wrist? Dr. Chin pulled up Eleanor's chart, showed me photos. The wrist bruising suggests restraint. Someone grabbed her with a lot of force shortly before the fall. You think someone pushed her? I'm a doctor, not a detective. But I've seen enough cases to know when injuries don't match the story. I flagged it in her records. Adult Protective Services was notified. Did they follow up? They called your brother. He explained that your mother has Parkinson's and sometimes gets confused. Said she probably grabbed onto him during the fall, and he was trying to help her. They noted it and closed the inquiry. Of course, they did. Stephen was smooth. Could talk his way out of anything with that earnest look and reasonable tone. I'd watched him do it our whole lives. I thanked Dr. Chen and headed back to Eleanor's room. Sat with her, my hand on hers, the one without the bruises. Told her I was going to fix this. Around 10, my phone rang. Stephen. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message saying he wanted to discuss Eleanor's care plan, to meet up and talk about next steps. I texted back, busy today. I'll handle everything. His response came back fast. We should coordinate. I'm still on her accounts. Need to make sure bills get paid. There it was. He was worried about losing access. Worried I'd figured out what he'd been doing. I replied, already taken care of. I've got it covered. I spent the rest of the morning at the house, going through Eleanor's papers. Found her important documents folder, insurance policies, property deed, her will, financial statements. The will was dated 5 years ago, a simple 50-50 split between Stephen and me. But tucked behind it, I found something else. A newer document, dated 6 months ago. A letter, in Eleanor's shaky handwriting. I'm changing my will to remove Stephen from inheritance. He's been taking from me. I have proof. I'm scared to confront him. David will get everything. Stephen gets nothing. It wasn't notarized, not legally binding, but it was dated right when the larger withdrawals started. I took photos of everything, uploaded them to a secure cloud drive, and made copies. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Tiffany. We need to talk. Meet me at Starbucks on Plano Road in 30 minutes. Come alone. Interesting. I texted back that I'd be there. I showed up 25 minutes later. Tiffany was at a corner table in the back, perfect makeup, hair done, looking like she was headed to brunch. I sat across from her without ordering anything. I didn't plan to stay long. She gave me a fake smile. Thanks for meeting me. I know things are tense right now. I wanted to clear the air before this gets messy. I leaned back. Cut to it, Tiffany. What do you want? The smile dropped. Stephen's worried you're getting the wrong idea about what happened. He loves your mom. We both do. This whole thing has been really hard on him. What thing? I asked, my voice flat. You mean the one where he took $56,000 from her and she ended up in the ICU? Tiffany's face went cold. The mask came off. You can't prove any of that. Stephen had legal access to that account. He was helping Eleanor manage her finances. She's not thinking clearly anymore with the Parkinson's. You know that. She's clear enough to know when someone's taking from her. Clear enough to write a letter about changing her will. That landed. Tiffany's eyes narrowed. What letter? The one where she says Stephen's been taking from her. The one where she cuts him out of her inheritance completely. That letter. Tiffany leaned forward. Dropped her voice. Listen to me carefully, David. You're going to back off this. You're going to accept that Eleanor fell down the stairs. You're going to let Stephen continue managing her accounts. And you're going to forget about any letters or accusations, or what? Or we'll have her declared incompetent. Get a court-appointed guardian. Someone who isn't you. Someone who will see things our way. You'll lose all access to her, all decision-making power. And when she dies, you'll get nothing. I stood up, looking down at her, sitting there with her designer bag and her threats. You're more naive than I thought. If you think that's going to work, see you in court, Tiffany. I walked out, drove straight to Marcus's office downtown, and told him about the conversation. Every word, every threat. He grinned. She threatened you. Made it obvious they're working together. That's consciousness of guilt. Document everything she said while it's fresh. Every detail. I spent the next hour writing out every detail of the Starbucks meeting. The threats about getting Eleanor declared incompetent. The plan to cut me out completely. The cold calculation in Tiffany's eyes. Marcus reviewed it. This is good, but we need more. We need them to admit what they did in a way that's rock solid. Something that leaves no wiggle room. What do you suggest? He thought about it, tapping his pen on the desk. Call Steven. Tell him you want to discuss a family settlement. Tell him you're willing to work something out. Sound like you're giving in, tired of fighting. See what he says. Texas is a one-party consent state. Record the whole thing. If he admits to anything, we've got him. That afternoon, I called him. I put my phone on speaker with a recording app running. Steven answered on the second ring. David, good to hear from you. Tiffany said you two talked. Yeah. She made some points I've been thinking about. Look, I don't want this to turn into a legal mess. Mom wouldn't want us fighting, so I'm willing to work something out. Silence on his end. Thinking it over. What kind of arrangement? You keep access to the accounts. We split the medical decisions. When she passes, we split everything 50-50 like the will says. No fighting, no lawyers. More silence. Then, what about the money I've been managing for her? Tiffany mentioned you had questions about that. I'm willing to overlook it. Call it a misunderstanding as long as we're on the same page going forward. Steven's voice changed, got more confident. That's smart, David. Really mature of you. I was worried you'd try to make this difficult. The truth is, Mom's been confused for months. I've been helping her with expenses she couldn't track anymore. The money went to good use. Her care, her bills, you know how it is, right? So, the $56,000, that all went to her care? Well, some of it went to helping me and Tiffany through a rough patch. But Mom wanted to help. She said so before she got too confused to remember. I glanced at Marcus sitting across from me. He was smiling, making a keep-going gesture. And Sunday night, when she fell? Steven's pause was longer this time. That was unfortunate. We'd been talking about her finances. She got upset, started saying things that didn't make sense. Accused me of taking from her. I tried to calm her down, but she got more worked up. Started walking toward the stairs. I tried to stop her, but she pulled away and lost her balance. So, you grabbed her wrist trying to stop her. Exactly. I was trying to help, but she was too worked up, jerked away from me, and went down the stairs before I could catch her. Marcus was nodding, making notes. We had it. A full confession, wrapped in excuses. All right, Steven. Let's plan to meet this week and work out the details. Sounds good. And David, I'm glad we're handling this like adults. Mom would be proud. I hung up. Looked at Marcus. That enough? That's a confession to grand larceny and physical harm causing serious bodily injury, plus collusion if we can tie Tiffany's threats to his actions. I'll get this to the DA's office today. How long until they move? Depends on how fast they work, but with an elderly victim in the ICU and a recorded confession, they'll move fast. I went back to the hospital, sat with Eleanor, whispered that justice was coming, and for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. The district attorney's office moved fast, but not TV show fast. Marcus called me Friday morning, said a detective had reviewed everything, the recording, the financial records, Linda's statement, Dr. Chen's documentation. They wanted to interview me directly. I met with Detective Jones that afternoon, went through everything again. She asked detailed questions, took notes, recorded my statement. She'd already spoken with Linda and Dr. Chen, already pulled the hospital records. She told me the case would go to the DA's office for review by Monday. Monday afternoon, Marcus called. The DA, Sarah, had signed off. They were filing charges: mistreatment of an elderly person, grand larceny, physical harm with serious bodily injury, collusion. Arrest warrants would be executed Tuesday morning. Tuesday morning, I was sitting in Eleanor's room when my phone started blowing up. 5 missed calls from Stephen, 3 from Tiffany. I ignored all of them. Around 11, Marcus texted, "Done, both in custody. Bond hearing Thursday." I spent the rest of the week at the hospital. Eleanor's condition stabilized. Sunday evening, Linda showed up with flowers. We talked for a while. She'd given her full statement to police, said she felt guilty for not acting sooner. I told her she did the right thing by speaking up, that her testimony mattered. Thursday morning, the bond hearing happened. Marcus called me after. Stephen and Tiffany both pleaded not guilty. The judge set bond at $75,000 each. Both posted it by end of day. Marcus warned me they'd probably try to contact Eleanor. I talked to the head nurse, explained the situation, showed her the restraining order Marcus had filed. She made notes in the system. The following week, Eleanor's eyes opened. I was sitting there when I heard her breathing change. Looked up and saw her staring at the ceiling, confused, scared. I stood, took her hand. "Mom, it's David. You're in the hospital. You're safe." She turned her head slowly. "David, what happened? You were hurt, but you're going to be okay." Stephen, he was angry. He grabbed me. "I know. You don't have to worry about Stephen anymore." Tears formed in her eyes. "I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. Not your fault." She squeezed my hand, then drifted back to sleep. A few days later, Tiffany showed up at the hospital. She got past the front desk before security caught her. She saw me. "David, tell them I have a right to see Eleanor. She's my mother-in-law. She also has a restraining order against you, which you're currently violating." One of the security guards spoke into his radio. "We need police response. Trespasser refusing to leave." Tiffany's face went red. "You can't do this. This is insane. We're family." "You stopped being family when you helped your husband take from an elderly woman and put her in the ICU. That's not what happened." Stephen was helping her. She was confused. "You're twisting everything because you want the inheritance for yourself." I stepped closer. I recorded Stephen confessing to taking $56,000 and admitting he grabbed Mom right before she fell. That's him explaining exactly what he did. Her mouth opened, closed. The police showed up 2 minutes later, checked her ID, confirmed the restraining order, and gave her a choice: leave voluntarily or get arrested for contempt. She left, but the look she gave me on the way out said this wasn't over. I went back to Eleanor's room, found her awake. She'd heard the commotion. "That was Tiffany." "Yeah. She won't be back." Eleanor was quiet for a moment. "I trusted them. I thought they were good people." "I know. I'm glad you're not like your brother. Get some rest, Mom. We'll talk more when you're stronger." She closed her eyes. I sat back down and pulled out my phone, documenting the restraining order violation. Everything Tiffany had said. Because if they wanted to fight this in court, I'd make sure every mistake they made was documented and ready to present to a jury. Over the next 2 weeks, Eleanor's recovery moved forward. Physical therapy, speech therapy. The Parkinson's complicated things, but she was motivated. The legal process ground forward. Stephen and Tiffany hired Robert Maxwell, an expensive defense attorney from Dallas, a former prosecutor. Marcus said Maxwell was already filing motions trying to suppress evidence. The preliminary hearing got scheduled for 6 weeks out. Meanwhile, I'd been going through Eleanor's finances with a forensic accountant Marcus recommended, a woman named Isabella Rossi. She found another $32,000 in suspicious transactions, credit cards, online transfers, forged checks. Total misappropriated funds, $88,000. Isabella put together a detailed report, a timeline of every fraudulent transaction, all of it while Eleanor was cutting back on her own expenses. Marcus filed an amended complaint, added more counts. He said if this went to trial, Stephen was looking at 8 to 12 years. Tiffany at 5 to 8. Eleanor gave her formal statement to the DA 3 weeks after waking up. I sat with her, watched her recount everything, how she'd discovered the missing money, how she confronted Stephen on Sunday, how he'd grabbed her and backed her toward the stairs, how she tried to pull away and he'd shoved her. The prosecutor, Sarah, recorded every word. After Eleanor finished, Sarah said, "This is one of the strongest cases I've handled. Defense doesn't have much room to work with." She was right. 4 weeks later, Marcus called. Maxwell reached out. They want to negotiate. What are they offering? Stephen pleads to grand larceny and physical harm. Serves 4 years. Tiffany pleads to collusion and grand larceny. Serves 2 years. Full restitution. That's it? Marcus sighed. Sarah wants to push for more. 6 years for Stephen. 3 for Tiffany. And she wants them to allocute. Admit exactly what they did in open court. I talked to Eleanor about it. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I want them to admit what they did. I want it on record. So that's what we pushed for. Marcus and Sarah held firm. Maxwell stalled for a week, then he caved. The plea hearing got scheduled for the following month. During that time, I moved Eleanor into a rehabilitation facility. A nice place, good staff. The house felt wrong to her now. I kept living at the house. Started going through Stephen's old room. Found his laptop in the closet. Battery dead, but it powered on when I plugged it in. No password. Amateur move. His email was still logged in. I found messages to Tiffany from 2 years ago. Subject line, the E-situation. He'd written out a plan. How much he could take each month without triggering alerts. How to forge Eleanor's signature on credit card slips. How her Parkinson's was getting worse, and she probably won't even remember half this stuff anyway. Tiffany's response, what if she does remember? What if she tells David? Stephen's reply, she won't. And if she does, we'll say she's confused. Who's he going to believe? I took screenshots of everything. Gave it all to Sarah. She said it showed clear planning and collusion. The day before the plea hearing, Tiffany called from a blocked number. David, please, we need to talk. We have nothing to talk about. I'm begging you. Stephen made mistakes, but he doesn't deserve prison. Tiffany's going to be fine. Can't you just let this go? No. I have a daughter. She's 6. If I go to prison, I'll lose custody completely. You should have thought about your daughter before you and Stephen did this to my mother. Lose my number, Tiffany. I hung up. Blocked the number. The next morning, Marcus and I met Sarah at the courthouse. Eleanor couldn't attend, but she'd written a victim impact statement that Sarah would read into the record after sentencing. Stephen and Tiffany showed up with Maxwell, both looking defeated. Stephen wouldn't look me in the eye. The judge called the case. Maxwell confirmed the plea agreement, listed out the charges Stephen was pleading to. Then Stephen stood. The judge looked at him over her reading glasses. Mr. Hayes, tell me in your own words what you did. I want to hear it from you. Stephen's voice was flat. I took $88,000 from my mother over 18 months. When she confronted me, I became angry. I grabbed her wrist. I shoved her toward the stairs. She fell and sustained severe injuries. Why? I needed the money. I had debts. When she found out, I panicked. The judge sentenced him to 6 years. Tiffany got 3. Both were taken into custody immediately. I watched them go. I felt nothing. Sarah approached me after. Your mother's statement will be part of the permanent record. The restitution order is in place. They'll pay back every dollar plus interest, and the no-contact order is lifetime. I drove to the rehab facility, told Eleanor what happened. She cried, out of relief that it was over. Thank you, she said, for believing me, for fighting for me always. What happens now? Now we focus on getting you better. The next 6 months were about rebuilding. Eleanor's physical recovery continued, slow but steady. The Parkinson's made everything harder, but she was stubborn. By month 4, she was walking with just a cane. By month 5, she was talking about moving back home. Said the rehab facility was nice, but it wasn't hers. I'd spent that time making the house safe for her. Installed grab bars in the bathroom. Added a stair lift so she wouldn't have to climb those stairs ever again. Converted the downstairs office into a proper bedroom. Made sure everything was set up for her to live comfortably. The restitution payments started coming in. Stephen and Tiffany's assets were seized by the court. The boat they'd bought with Eleanor's money. The designer clothes, their cars. Everything sold at auction to pay back what they'd taken. It took months of legal work, but eventually Eleanor got $74,000 back. The rest would come from their prison wages over the years, 25 cents an hour. It would take forever, but it was something. Linda became a regular visitor. She and Eleanor formed a real friendship, weekly coffee dates, book club meetings at the community center. Someone Eleanor could trust who lived close enough to check in without it feeling like babysitting. I hired a caretaker named Elena, a former nurse in her 50s, warm personality, competent. Someone who could help with the day-to-day stuff I couldn't handle while working full-time. Eleanor liked her immediately. Elena said Eleanor reminded her of her own mother. Marcus helped me establish a trust to protect Eleanor's remaining assets. Made sure no one else could access her money without multiple approvals from different parties. Set it up so if anything happened to me, a professional trustee would take over. No more family members with joint access to anything. Life slowly returned to something normal, stable, predictable in a good way. Stephen sent a letter from prison 6 months in, apologetic, claiming he'd found religion, asking for forgiveness. I read it once and threw it away. Eleanor didn't want to see it. Tiffany sent nothing. Just completed her sentence quietly. I started dating someone I met at a work conference. An insurance adjuster from Austin. Her name was Sophia. She knew the whole story from the beginning. Didn't run away screaming when I explained my brother was in prison for mistreatment of an elderly person. Actually said it showed I had integrity. We took things slow, but it was nice having someone who understood the weight I'd been carrying. Eleanor met her 3 months in, gave her approval. Said Sophia seemed like good people. Coming from Eleanor, that was high praise. Around month 8, I got a call from Sarah. Stephen's appeal had been denied. The sentence was final. He'd serve every day of his 6 years. I thanked her and hung up. Felt something close to closure. That weekend, I took Eleanor back to the house for the first time since the incident. She'd been nervous about returning, afraid of the memories, but we walked in together. I'd redecorated, new paint, new furniture, changed enough that it felt different, but kept enough that it was still home. Eleanor stood in the living room looking around. Then she nodded. "This is good. Thank you." We spent the afternoon sorting through old photo albums. Found pictures of Stephen and me as kids, before everything went wrong, before greed turned him into someone I didn't recognize. Eleanor stared at one photo for a long time. Both of us at age 10 and 8, smiling, arms around each other. I wonder when it changed, she said. When he stopped being that boy. I don't know, Mom. Maybe he was always that person, and we just didn't see it. She closed the album. I'm proud of you. Your father would be proud, too. I just did what needed to be done. I squeezed her hand. I will never let anyone hurt you, not even my own brother. That night, after Eleanor went to bed, I sat on the back patio looking at the stars. Thought about everything that had happened. It had been worth it. Every sleepless night, every difficult conversation, every moment of doubt, because Eleanor was safe now. A year and a half after the plea hearing, I got a call from the prison. Stephen had been transferred to a minimum security facility for good behavior. Model prisoner. The kind of thing that happens when criminals are smart enough to play the system, right? I didn't care. Let him have his reduced security status and extra privileges. He was still locked up for another 4.5 years. Tiffany completed her sentence after 26 months. Earned early release for good behavior. Moved back to San Jose, California, immediately. I heard through mutual acquaintances she was working at a call center, living with her sister in some apartment, trying to rebuild a relationship with her daughter, who barely remembered her. I hoped it worked out for the kids' sake, but Tiffany was no longer my problem. Eleanor had fully moved back home by then. Elena came by 3 days a week. Linda checked in daily. Sophia had become a permanent fixture in my life. We'd been dating for over a year. Things were serious. She'd practically moved in. Eleanor approved. Life had settled into a rhythm. Then one Tuesday, I got a letter from Stephen's prison counselor. He wanted to participate in a restorative justice program, victim and offender mediation. The counselor said Stephen had requested the session. Wanted to apologize to Eleanor in person. I talked to Eleanor about it. She was quiet for a long time. I don't know if I want to see him after everything. Let me think about it. She thought about it for another week. Then one morning over coffee, she said she'd do it. Said she wanted to look Stephen in the eye and hear what he had to say. The session got scheduled for 3 weeks out, held at the prison facility outside Huntsville. Marcus and I would be there as support. The day arrived. We drove to the prison. They led us to a small conference room. Stephen was brought in 5 minutes later. He'd lost weight, looked 10 years older. He sat across from Eleanor and me. Didn't make eye contact at first, kept his hands folded on the table. Stephen started talking. His voice was smaller. Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me. What I did was unforgivable. His voice cracked. I'm a monster. I became the kind of person who could watch his own mother fall and think about how it might benefit me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all of it. He looked at Eleanor. You didn't deserve any of this. You were a good mother, and I repaid you by taking your money and harming you. The room was quiet. Eleanor took a breath. Stephen, I appreciate you saying those things. I hope you mean them. But I need you to understand something. What you did didn't just hurt me physically. You broke my trust. You made me question everything I thought I knew about you. That damage doesn't heal with an apology. I know. I don't forgive you. I might never forgive you. But I'm glad you're taking responsibility. I'm glad you're admitting what you did. That's more than you gave me when you were trying to cover it up. Stephen nodded, tears on his face now. I understand. I am so sorry. Eleanor looked at him for a long moment. I hope you use your time here to become someone better.
I will.
I promise. The facilitator wrapped up the session. Stephen was led out. We sat there for a few minutes, processing. I asked Eleanor how she felt. She said she didn't know yet. Said she needed time to think about it. We drove home in silence. Eleanor never forgave him after that. And honestly, I never did either. He made his choices. Life moved on anyways. Sometimes I wonder, what kind of person would his daughter, Tiffany's daughter, grow up to be knowing her father did that?